Alright, I am going to go today and ride up to my local beta dealer and check out the new Alp 4.0 that just came in. He's got both models, and I think I want to test ride the off-road one. I'm waiting for this bike for a long time to come out. Let's go check it out. While we're on our way up there, I was thinking, my hope for this bike is that I think it's a direct competitor for the Honda 300L, maybe the 300L Rally or just the standard 300L. I know there's some other bikes in that range too, maybe like KLX300S or R, maybe even the KLX 230s. There's a couple of dual sports in that kind of 300-ish category, and I really think this is a direct competitor with those. So my hope, having had several 300Ls before, is that this Beta has a 350 in it and the engine is significantly more powerful. What I am aware of is that even though it's a 350, it will never do this like this 350 does. Different motor platform. Oh man, God bless KTM for their 350s and 500s. Oh, exciting bikes. I guess since we're on my KTM 350, we can compare that. Woo! We can compare that to this Beta, since it's a 352. Here we are at Big Country Motorsports. These guys are awesome. They sell Beta, Fantic, all kinds of stuff. Oh man, look at all this stuff. I'm going to test ride the X model with the 21-inch front and 18-inch rear, and they have it in red and white. But I'll tell you what I really like the looks of is this particular model. It really looks freaking cool, like a retro futuristic scrambler kind of thing. And looking at these tires and stuff, I bet you could do gravel roads and double track stuff all day long on something just like that. Okay, so I'm going to leave them my 350 and I'm going to check out this guy. They just gave me about a half a tank of fuel. Let's see. Let's turn it on. Pretty slick looking dash. I like it. The bike is way more compact than I thought it would be. It's a lot slimmer than it looks in the pictures. It's actually a lot shorter. And I don't know if you can see, but I am pretty much flat-footed on both sides. And I have a 30-inch inseam. And I am 5'11" and a half. So this is a really approachable bike for a lot of people. It's pretty quiet, but it does have a tiny bit of a rumble to it, but it's really quiet. I'm looking at these tires. It's actually a lot more aggressive front DOT knobby than, it's a lot more aggressive than most dual sports come with. And look at this back one too. This is almost like a slightly milder version of a Dunlop D606 front and rear. And again, these plastics are really nice. Nothing is loose. Everything is nice fit here. All of this stuff is nice and tight and tidy. Got a tiny little headlight here, but it's really cool looking. A surprisingly large radiator up under here. And it looks like an oil cooler too. And got a half decent skid plate, to tell you the truth. Although I don't know that I would trust it to protect this oil cooler if it got hit really hard. The exhaust is cool looking and small. I'm surprised it's so quiet, but oh, I see why. Because, sorry for the sideways picture, but there's a huge catalytic converter under here on the bottom. Wow, you really do need a skid plate. You're gonna smash this thing up. So I think a skid plate would be a first addition on this if you're gonna do any serious off-roading on it. Engine sounds good and smooth. Nothing very noisy here. This is all really minimalist and exposed, so I'm sure it's saving a lot of weight. It's got a big fan on the radiator there. I do like this lever. That's a lot better than some of the chintzy ones that came on the Honda stock. It's like foot pegs are kind of more of a classic dirt bike style. The seat looks good. It feels kind of squishy. I guess we'll find out about it here soon. It does have an LED tail light and an LED headlight and LED license plate light, but it has old school blinkers. I don't know why them and KTM do that. Even brand new $12,000 KTMs still have those old school blinkers. Kind of silly at this point. It's like maybe they bought 10,000 of them and they want to run out of them first. All right, so kickstand is out of the way and actually really easy to get to. I fumble with my kickstand on my KTM a lot, and that's really easy to kick down with a boot and kick up with a boot. Shifter looks nice and beefy too. It's kind of an odd bend on that shifter, so that might be something pretty unique if you want to replace it, but it is a folding tip, so it looks pretty good. All right, let's give it a go here. A little bit of gas. Nice clutch pull. It's a little stiffer on the clutch pull than I thought, to tell you the truth. Ooh, front end's kind of, front end's pretty divey. I would say it's better than a 300L, but that's still pretty divey. The shifter's in a weird spot. I would definitely have to adjust it for boots. And it definitely needs broken in too. It's kind of clanking into gear, but I think that's to be expected with a new bike. I do like this dash. You can see it good. It also tells you what gear you're in. So it's got some roll on. 65. I bet it'd be happy to cruise at 65 for a long time, but I bet the happy place, I feel like 60 is probably where you would want to spend most of your time. But like every dual sport, somewhere in that 55 to 65 range is really where they're happy. Okay, comparing to my KTM 350, which is really not a fair fight, but let's talk about it anyway since it's a 350 and since I rode it up here and it's a dual sport, and you may consider it if you're looking at one of these. Compared to the 350, this is kind of like the Honda 300L or the KLX300. It pretty much feels like half the power. It feels like about 50% of the power. There's just no getting around it. And I'm betting on paper, if you look at the horsepower or the torque curve or something like that, it probably would indicate that. If they're saying 35 horsepower out of this, or 34 horsepower out of this, I don't know, that's kind of questionable to me. I'm gonna accelerate here in just a minute again, but this really feels like, it really almost feels like a stock 300L. Just like about every other dual sport I've owned, it was difficult to get into neutral from first or second. Now, granted, this bike only has 9 miles on it, so let's be fair. Transmission's not exactly broken in. Engine's not exactly broken in, but let's see what it does. Come on, shift. I'm trying to also be respectful and not put the bike into the red line RPM range too, because it's still being broke in and this is a demo ride. I don't want to be respectful to the dealer as well. I did want to try to do 70 miles an hour and see what that's like for just a second. So I'm directly behind a truck and I'm honestly not getting blown around as much as I did on my 300L Rally, to tell you the truth. My head's getting blown around, but the bike is not. That's 70, and you got some vibration through the handlebars, definitely more than the 300L, not as bad. And actually, vibration through the handlebars might be on par with my 350 KTM. There's 75. I don't want to take it over 80 and get into the redline stuff, but it'll do 80. So you got a little bit more top speed than a 300L here, just I guess because you got 50 more cc's of displacement, but bottom end wise, mid-range power wise, acceleration wise, I don't think it's really any different than a stock 300L and a modded 300L with about $500 worth of parts thrown at it. And the same goes for a KLX 300. Throw about $500 worth of parts with it, and I think it's honestly more expensive. I think the only difference here is that you got more power from like 70 to 80 miles an hour, and you could probably do 85 and relatively hold it on this, whereas it's kind of difficult to do on a 300L sometimes. This is such a compact little bike. I'm really shocked in person how compact it is. I really was expecting it to be different looking. There's some things that definitely cut the cost on here. You can tell again, like this handlebars, all of these risers, these mirrors, these gears, levers, stuff like that. Definitely kind of cost-cutting stuff, but I mean overall, it works, and it's no different than a Honda or Kawasaki right out of the box. You'll probably modify those things. Most people will. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but there's a lot of grooves, a lot of rain grooves on this road, and I'm surprised with as aggressive as these knobbies are on here, or as at least aggressive as they look. I'm surprised, but they barely follow any of that. My Tusk D Sports and things like that would have definitely followed a lot more of those rain grooves. And I will say it again, at 55, this bike is extremely pleasant, just like any dual sport. 60 is good. I feel minimal vibrations right here. Let's get back on the highway though. The vibrations come on at about, start to get a little stronger at 65, but they're not that bad. That's minimal. Some better bars would probably soak up some of that, some better grips. I think the real vibration comes on, yeah, like right about 68, 69, 70. It really comes on. And then it's bearable. It's not terrible, but it's not like KTM 350 and 500 bad, but it's not Honda good. It's nowhere even, you know, I haven't even talked about this compared to my Ibex. Power-wise, this feels like about 60% of my Ibex, and I guess it should, because the Ibex is a twin-cylinder 450 and this is a single-cylinder 350. On the road, no comparison whatsoever. Seating position and everything, this feels like a bike that is probably about as small as the Ibex 450 is compared to a lot of other middleweight adventure bikes. This is even smaller, and I would venture to say this is a more compact, smaller bike than the Honda 300L. I'll tell you who I think would like this bike is people that have the old KTM 390 Adventure and they don't want to go to the new Adventure R and spend all the money that KTM is charging for that with their surcharges and tariffs and quick shifters and dealer fees. I bet out the door on this one is probably $2,000, $2,500 cheaper than the KTM. And I think you would probably almost end up with a bike that's dangerously close in terms of capability to the 390. In fact, let's talk about that for a second. So I've had the privilege of riding the new KTM Adventure 390R, the 2025 model, and power-wise, man, this feels so similar. Sound-wise, this feels so similar. Vibrations-wise, this feels so similar. This has more bottom-end power and gets through to the mid-range, but then the KTM would take off after that. But torque on the bottom, let's say for the first half of the RPM range on this is better than the stock KTM 390. Now, I've not ridden a 390 now that people are coming out with air filters and exhausts and ECU tunes, and that might wake them up quite a bit, but I have ridden one with the latest ECU tune from KTM that makes it stop flaming out and supposed to give it a little more power, and it's bottom end. This one might have it or be dead equal to it. I would venture to say a little bit more. Let's test these brakes. ABS kicks in pretty quick. It feels like a pretty crude, old school ABS. It tries to lock up for just a second and then it kicks in, but it does work. Yeah, I don't know, who is this bike for? Somebody who wants something like a 300L, but they want something more unique, a little bit more compact, a little bit more approachable. This is probably size-wise closer to like the 300L S model, which is the low-seat version. Somebody who's coming from the KTM 390 Adventure older model and they're not ready to go to that the newer model KTM, or maybe they don't even trust KTM anymore. I have that problem with any of the new KTM stuff. Anybody who's looking at like a KLX 300S but wants, or 300, but maybe wants something a little bit slightly more road oriented, but could still do some double track and probably even single track decently on this too. Man, as I'm shifting down, the transmission is still pretty notchy, but that's to be expected on a new bike. That engine takes a little bit of a while to kind of revs up. It does really have that, now that I'm thinking about it, it really does have that same feel of like a KTM 390. These motors are damn near identical. This one just has a little bit more power on the bottom, and the KTM would take off on the top. Who else is this for? I don't know. Somebody who wants a little bit more roadworthy version of like a DRZ 400S, or the new DRZ 4S. Maybe somebody wants a little bit more road version, but still wants to have 21 and 18-inch wheels. Trying to think of whatever else is out there. This is probably a good alternative to somebody who's thinking of like the KLX 230S, that kind of stuff. Now, granted, this is probably going to be $1,500 to $2,000 more, but I would say you're getting, I guess that's up to you to decide if the additional power is worth it. Let's talk about the seat for just a second. It's better than a stock Honda 300L, way better than a stock KLX 230 or 300. I would say it's on par with like the KTM 390s, the older ones and even the newer ones. It's nowhere even near my my Ibex 450 seat. I'm thinking, let's see, on my KTM 350 I have a seat concepts, and I think this is about equivalent to that. So I guess what you could say there is that you know, this bike comes with something that's as good as a seat concepts seat. So if you're thinking about like the Honda or the Kawasaki, you know, that's $350 that you would spend probably trying to get to this level of comfort. So there is zero snatchy throttle. I know people complain about throttle snatchiness. There's none of that. It's pretty butter smooth. What else I have not done is stand up on this bike. I did stand up on it in the showroom, and I felt pretty gargantuan. I would definitely have to have some tall bars and some risers, and I would actually probably be looking for some lower foot pegs too. But in terms of like riding it around off-road aggressively, I don't know, I'd maybe move the bars forward a little bit, but that's just me. I like a tall stance. It feels honestly like a small beta dirt bike. If you've ever sat on one of the betas, they feel really compact and the bars feel towards you. So I guess they mimicked that sort of feel, intentionally or not. Let's see, here's a good curve. Oh, it leans in really good. Shockingly, that lean in and turn is a little bit like my KTM 350. I guess it's that kind of shorter, that steeper rake angle on the 350 makes it really really responsive. This kind of feels the same way, and in fact I'm looking it down at the rake angle. I can tell that It has a really tight, compact angle there. In fact, that's probably why the whole bike feels compact and looks shorter, is just because of how steep that angle is. Yeah, this is really like 300L on the bottom, which is a torquier motor than a 390, and then like from the mid-range and onto the top, it's more closer to the 390, and then as you get up on top, the 390 will take off. So I guess the answer is it sits somewhere right in between those things, which it should, because it's a 350. So yeah, it's almost such a short wheelbase that it's to the point where it's mildly twitchy. Ooh, that was shugging in the wrong gear. Yeah, man, woo, it flicks in really quick, like it wants to turn really quick. Like, you'd have to be really careful being too sporty on here. I could see somebody tucking the front end trying to get a little too sporty on this with these tires. That's why I almost feel like that other variant with the, what is it, 19 and 17 inch might even be better, to tell you the truth. I wish that I had time to ride that one, but it's not one of their demo bikes, so, and I don't want to take up his time. But the one I thought I would be most excited about is this one with the 21 and 18 inch wheels, but now having seen them and having ridden them, I honestly feel more excited about that one with the 17 and 19 inch wheels. I think that one would be more fun. Let's have one more look at it here. There's my 350. Hey, baby. Hey, it went into neutral easy that time. I did want to show you guys one thing. The gas. So this is all kind of flimsy plastic here, but I don't know. It's probably not a problem. It's kind of scooterish, if that makes sense, like mopedish. But this little tiny gas cap right here, this is weird. And it's hard to get out, and it takes a lot of turns to get out there. I'm betting somebody will come up with an improved lid here pretty quick. And it almost feels like overcomplicated, because you can see the breather is there, and then there's like a rubber diaphragm so that the breather comes out of the breather hose, then sits down on this, and the hose runs off into here. So it's nice and sleek looking, but I don't know, that feels like kind of overcomplicated. Again, kickstand is so easy to get to. I like that, but the kickstand foot is tiny. Look at that. It's tiny. I'm betting kickstand enlargement plate is probably something that's really needed. Let me look at the hubs on here. One of the things I noticed about the KTM 390, the new one, is that the hubs look like junk metal. This actually looks pretty nice, and it looks like it has a cush drive on it, so that would explain why it's got a little bit better road manners. Yeah, these are really nice wheels. These spokes look nice and heavy duty, and these hubs look like nice cast painted aluminum. Or these hubs look like a lot better quality than the KTM 390. Maybe about the same as the Honda, maybe a little bit nicer. Swing arm. Looks like it's from 1992. Grab handles are nice and sturdy. Actually, really nice and sturdy. Let's see. Let's lean it over. So it doesn't feel too top heavy. I can get down. That's about a 45-degree angle, and then pick it back up real easy. So it's got a good low center of gravity, that's for sure. Looking at the shock, I don't see any adjustability on it other than the preload in here. I see some preload collars. It's actually a really small, tiny shock. That's actually smaller than a stock 300L, but it felt like it was good. It didn't feel like it was wallowing out when I hit a few dips, so that's good. The front forks feel a little stiffer than a 300L, but they still have a lot of dive to them, but I guess they were trying to make this nice and cushy and comfortable. And this I was talking about the hubs, so it's actually really nice hubs. And again, these tires are a little more aggressive than I expected them to be. This is that tiny little headlight. It's kind of cool looking. I like it. All right, well, overall, that was a fun little test ride, and the answer I really wanted to know was, is this something I would buy? If I was considering a 300L or a KLX 300 or a KTM 390 or similar bikes, and I wanted something that has a really unique look, I wanted something that was good on the price, one that had something that had good kind of tractor feel, came with a good seat to begin with, came with good tires to begin with. Does not look like it needs very many mods. I would say a tail tidy and the bars and grips maybe, and mirrors. Everything else looks pretty good. Oh, and a skid plate. Definitely want a skid plate on this. That's a lot of exposed stuff down there. I'm back on my 350 right now and headed home. I enjoyed that test ride a lot. I wanted to mention a couple of things, some of my final thoughts as I was talking to Ronnie there at Big Country about the bike and kind of comparing it to the 300L, KLX 300, KTM 390, that sort of stuff. I didn't mention it too much, but I think it's a formidable competitor for a KTM 390 Enduro. I think probably by the time you take all the fees and stuff that KTM charges, you're probably going to be about the same out the door price. And the KTM might have a little bit higher top end power and maybe a little bit better suspension, but not too terribly much. Okay, so it's been about an hour since I rode, and I ran some errands, did a few other things, and I kind of tried to digest my thoughts on it so I could kind of summarize there. I think the words that are coming to mind are, if the Honda 300L and the KTM Adventure had a baby, that Beta Alp would probably be it. It's like a slightly more street biased version of a Honda 300L, but it's like a much more off-road oriented version of a KTM 390. And the suspension is, again, kind of somewhere right in between. It's not as soft and mushy as a stock 300L suspension, but it's not quite as good as the stock 390 suspension, at least the newer model. Probably on par with the older model, I would say. And in terms of price, it's like right there in the middle of the 300L price and the 390 price. In terms of power, it's right there in the middle. Oh, sorry, my dog said hi. In terms of power, it's right there in the middle. It's got the bottom end and the torque that the 300L has up till about halfway the middle range, which is what's missing on the 390. I'm sorry, 390 owners, but a 300L with a few mild performance mods has more bottom end power than a KTM 390, period. And then where the 300 kind of starts to taper off about halfway up the mid-range, halfway up the RPM range, the 390 takes over and takes off, and it has a lot more power, and it can go faster. And so the 350, the Beta Alp, is kind of dead smack in the middle. It's got that bottom end torque of the 300L, but it's got a little more top end and mid-range than a 300L, but it doesn't have the top end of the 390. But it does have more bottom end than the 390. So again, it's like right in the middle. So I think for somebody who's looking in that kind of like 300 to 400 cc range bike that can do some light dual sporting and gravel roads and stuff like that, it's going to be a great bike. I really found myself honestly gravitating, as I mentioned several times, toward the one with the 19-inch front wheel, and I think it's a 17-inch front wheel, or maybe it's 19 front and back. I don't know. I really feel like looking at that bike and comparing them side by side, that honestly, you could probably do just about the same stuff that most people who buy this bike are probably going to do with it as you could with the wheel, with the 21/18 inch wheel version. You could probably more easily cruise on the road. It would probably be more comfortable on gravel, and this is the smaller wheel kind of scrambler style version I'm talking about. So better on the road. It's going to be probably better on gravel. It's probably going to be better on hard pack, sort of like 2-track style roads, things like that. It's probably even going to get you through some kind of mild single track stuff too. I think only until you get to some of the really more technical single track stuff will the 21 and 18 with the real knobbies be a much more advantage. But I just don't see the people buying that bike and the market demographic for that bike really being somebody that takes it on tight single track all the time, that couldn't deal with the attributes of the smaller wheels when they occasionally do harder single track, and then get all the benefits everywhere else. So I tried to summarize my thoughts in the parking lot when I finished, and I just couldn't do it, so I had to think about it some more. It's a really cool bike, and it's crazy to me that some of these, or all these kind of like basic dual sport style bikes, just the nuances between them, the small nuances between them, the small design changes between them, it's crazy how much they can really change the bike. So it's another good entry point in a segment that I'm really, really fond of, which is that kind of like basic dual sport sort of stuff and basic like lightweight adventure stuff. I'm happy to have that one in there. I really like Beta stuff. I really like the looks of it. Is it a bike that I will personally buy? Probably. I don't know. I've got to see some other bikes that are coming out in the next 6 months before I make a decision like that. If I didn't have a dual sport already, like what you're looking at here in the picture, I probably would be interested in that. But as it stands right now, if I've already got a dual sport and you've already got a dual sport, I don't know that it's a compelling enough reason to just go, sell it and buy something. But if you are, I'm actually messaging with a person in one of my riding groups right now who has an older KTM 390 Adventure for his wife, and he's complained about it before. And I think if you're a person that's coming from that older 390 Adventure, I think this is really, really worth looking at. I think it's lighter weight. I think it's pretty much got mostly the same power. I think it's going to be better off-road, and I think it's a slightly more modern design too. So I don't know. I appreciate you listening to me kind of ramble through all my thoughts here. Nothing was very organized. I kind of did this on the fly. I just found out this morning that bike finally came in, and I just ran up there and test rode it to see if it's something I would want. So I just kind of did all of this stuff like off the cuff. So I appreciate you letting me ramble, and I appreciate you watching, and I appreciate you listening. So I hope this helps somebody. Thank you.